Hi. Today in their video, we're going to take a look at victim consciousness, what it is, and why you want to either stay away from it or get out of it as quickly as you can. Today, we're going to outline what is victim consciousness, and over the next couple of videos, we're going to go into it in a little bit more depth. The reason why I want to get victim consciousness out there, you probably know of it, but in case you don't, here's an overview. And it's also something to be very careful about because the world seems to be drifting more and more into victim consciousness. Now, the first time I heard of victim consciousness was back in the early 90s when I started undergoing counseling. Until then, I never heard of it. And it's really incredibly common. So, what exactly is victim consciousness? Victim consciousness is a consciousness whereby you identify with being the victim. And there's a lot of benefits with identifying to be the victim. But the problem is it's actually very disempowering when you're the victim, okay? And it's an interesting thing that I would say if we look at psychotherapy and self-development, it's really taken off since the Second World War. And there's a lot more knowledge about the self and self-development and a lot more people focused on taking responsibility. If you go back to, say, the 1940s, 1950s even, a lot of people would have been very, set in their ways, very judgmental to anything that was different or odd. And the idea of having an inner life or issues, unless you came from some kind of very rich class of people, it would have been seen as very odd behavior. If you had a trauma, people say, pull yourself together, stupid stuff like that. And so I think in general, society has advanced that knowledge of self-help to some degree. But yet equally at the same time, the victim consciousness seems to be getting bigger. Okay. So the problem with victim consciousness is that it's not a consciousness based upon you genuinely being a victim. It's you identifying with being a victim. Now, there can be an overlap. For example, let's say something bad happened to you, something traumatic happened to you. You're a victim of a crime, say. Well, you are a victim of that crime. Sure. But are you going to identify with being a victim of that crime? And are you going to identify for the rest of your life with being a victim of that crime? That's the real interesting thing. So sure, something bad could happen to you and you could be a victim and you've right to say I was a victim and I was affected and I was hurt by it. But at some stage, you have to move on. You can't stay in that state of victimhood, 6 years on, 16 years on, 26 years on. Many years ago, I remember when I was in my early teens, I watched some TV program and they're interviewing this guy. I don't know anything about the program so far. I just remember them interviewing this guy. And, this is back in the mid 80s. And he was talking about how his wife left him 25 years earlier and that he was just waiting for her to come back. And even me as a teenage boy, I said, that's just ridiculous. He used to be waiting for his wife to come back. That is an example of victim consciousness. Okay, we always think of victim consciousness as I'm being oppressed. Yeah, sometimes, but victim consciousness can also be things like hanging around for the next 25 years waiting for your wife or husband to come back. If they haven't come back after a few months or a year or two, it's very unlikely they're going to come back after 25, especially if you haven't talked to them for 25 years. Okay, so that's a form of victim consciousness. I'm a victim. I'm sitting here. I'm disempowered. I can't do anything. This is basically what victim consciousness is a sense of disempowerment. I can't do anything. I have no power. And an interesting example of it, I think, or a way of thinking about it, I think is pretty good, is Karpman-Drama triangle, which is used a lot in transactional analysis, it's a form of psychotherapy. So what I like with this triangle is it has kind of this three dynamics. You got the persecutor, you got the victim, and you've also got the rescuer. And each one has fallen into a trap. Okay, the trap that the victim has fallen into is thinking, I'm totally helpless. I can't do anything to get out of this. The rescuer is a person or even society itself who keeps trying to rescue this person to fix things. And they're falling into the trap of not looking at their own self, always running after trying to fix things for this other person or this other group. And it makes them feel good that they're helping out. But actually, they're actually enablers. They're actually enabling these people to feel like victims. And of course, then we have the persecutor, who is the person that we pick. or the group that we pick to blame for these problems. So the victim triangle always has somebody to blame, okay? And somebody that in some way is enabling the victim to feel a victim. Now there's different types of victim consciousness. We got the obvious one of a person just feeling, say, disempowered in their life. They feel that they can't achieve what they want to achieve. They feel that because their socioeconomic background or their gender or their sexual orientation or the color of their skin or their demographic, the wealth demographic they come from, and some way or other, they're picking something and feeling that I'm basically a victim. I can't do anything. And it's very comfortable to be a victim. You get a lot of sympathy when you're a victim. And there's always some kind of rescuer there to rescue or try and save you and so on. So that's on a personal level. We also have a societal level, okay? Entire societies can disempower by focusing on certain groups of people. And this is where we've got to be very careful with political correctness. Because the problem with political correctness is there's a tendency on taking people, when we look at this idea of identity politics, where we judge people by the group they're from. And we might say, well, you're from a victim group. You're a minority, you're a victim group. Therefore, we're going to make a big deal out of you. Maybe we're going to create some quotas and so on to help you. And the problem with that is you're reaffirming the victimhood of this group of people. And you're not doing anything to empower the people. You're just reaffirming the victimhood. And that's the problem with focusing on this idea in groups, in organizations, in society in general, that there's a certain group of victims. Now, you might think, okay, Dermot, that's a terrible thing to say. You're basically saying that, well, nobody's a victim, that we shouldn't help these groups of people. No, I'm not saying we shouldn't help these groups of people, but our attitude should not be one of endless handouts and guilt trips and basically saying, well, this bunch of society caused that bunch of society's problems, and saying to these people who are from a minority in society where they're struggling for one or other reason, and the reasons might be valid reasons, but we're not lifting them out. We are just reaffirming, you're a victim and we're going to give you handouts. You're a victim, we're going to keep apologizing. Now, certain groups in society have been abused and they do need help, but they need to be built up rather than built down. And yes, they do need, to some degree, they need handouts and they need help with maybe education and so on and so forth. But it should be an empowering thing. And this is the mistake that people make, is they are killing the person with kindness, okay? I remember years ago, I call it being a do-gooder. I remember years ago, I was a student, and the town I was in, I was with a friend of mine, go for a walk, and we saw this small house. This man came out, and he asked us to try and open his gas cylinder. And it turns out the guy had no thumbs, so he couldn't flick over the gas. He's having some trouble with it. And we went in as a pair of do-gooders, and we tried to fix it. And then we couldn't get it going either. And then he got mad as hell and shouted at us, and we had to leave. And it struck me at the time that he felt offended. And I was kind of confused, thinking he asked for help, we went in to help, and we fustered a lot over him, and then it didn't work right, and then he shouted. Now, maybe to some degree he was impatient, but also I felt subtly that he felt patronized, should I say. He felt patronized by us in some way. And he was, because we're a pair of do-gooders. We were trying to fix things for him. And it's not that we shouldn't have helped him, but our attitude was wrong. And that's why he felt offended. And, you know, when you kind of approach things like a do-gooder, which is basically your position of the rescuer, you're basically trying to make yourself feel good, and you kind of offend the person who's the victim in some way. And ultimately, you're coming from outside trying to fix their situation. I remember some years ago, or maybe not so long ago, a couple of years ago, for example, I was watching some YouTube videos, and I saw this guy in India, and he sees some guy impoverished on the side of the road, and then he goes out and he buys him like a tea making machine or something, and sets him up, and everybody's like, "Ooh, we helped this guy." And I was thinking, have you really helped this guy? Do you know why he has no money? Why he's on the side of the road? Do you know anything about him? You asked anything about him? And it was kind of put in the video to look like he's, you know, really great helping this poor guy who's a victim and can't help himself, of course. But the problem that I've noticed with a lot of this do-goodery is that how do you know the guy isn't an alcoholic? Maybe he'll sell the tea making machine and buy some drinks and get drunk again. The guy didn't ask. He just presumed that you are poor, therefore you're disempowered. Therefore, I have to give you something. And when you give somebody something like that, often they won't appreciate it, or it's inappropriate. You're forcing them into some kind of program, or you're forcing them into some job they don't like or whatever. You're not talking to them. And when you actually sit down, go back to that guy's house, talk to him, and then talk to his family, and then talk to his neighbors. And then you get some idea of where he's at and what he thinks. And you're going to find out what his family thinks and what his neighbor thinks. And you might find out that the guy has valid reasons why he doesn't have a job or why he is the way he is. You might find out that the guy is an alcoholic. Because why doesn't the guy have some kind of income? Why is he just wandering around the place? He has a home in the video. He had a home and stuff. But it's portrayed in the video like he's just a victim and I just give him something, I'll be okay. And if you look at throughout the world, how many times governments give people handouts, and yet people still stay as victims. Because I'm giving you something, and some way I want you to stay being a victim. It makes me feel good to give you something. Okay, so we look at politics worldwide. It's like these poor people, these developed nations, these minorities. It's always victim, 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 victim. And you can throw everything you want, all the freebies at the people. But it all comes back down to this old saying, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man a fish, you teach it for life. We got to be empowering people. When we just give somebody something with no frame of reference, it means nothing. I remember some years ago, there was this, and maybe still going around, there was this worldwide focus on project on trying to give laptops to everybody in the third world. And they went around giving villages, people laptops. And then I looked into a bit, and I saw later that people were like using the laptop as a mat for putting their plate on to eat their dinner and stuff. And it suddenly struck me that if you give some villager a laptop and the guy has no electricity, what the hell use is the laptop? You see, the guy has to have a plug. And maybe before giving, you might say, well, we're educating the kid with a laptop. Well, what about the internet connection? But you don't have an internet connection. Well, what are you going to watch? Parents can't read or write. Kids can't read or write. What education are you giving these people? What outreach are you giving? You know, rather than giving the kid a laptop, you better to enroll the kid in some kind of classes, like a little village school or something. Are they getting that? Are they not getting that? Is there coordination? Did you ask the people, if there is a village school, did you ask the people in the village school, would a laptop be useful for these kids? And what's the best way we could use laptops? So rather than giving every kid in the village a laptop, blowing a load of money and them used for table mats and frisbees and God knows what. Ask the people, the social outreach workers who work there, and they might say, well, we get, don't give us 50 laptops to 50 families, just give 10. We'll set them up in this room. We'll have electricity. You know what I mean? So this is the problem of victim consciousness. Victim consciousness isn't just about being a victim. Victim consciousness is also about projecting as perceived rescuers. We're projecting, we're going to fix you. And, you know, if I try and fix you, I'll always underestimate you. And if you ever had somebody try and fix you, you'll realize that you end up feeling, I feel like a victim here. They're trying to fix me. And it just always feels inappropriate. So this is the problem of victim consciousness. It's not just individuals feeling victimized. It's whole movements in society where a bunch of do-gooders try and fix other people or groups of people, and it never seems to work. And it can't work because you're projecting onto them you're the victim. And I want you to stay the victim because I feel good helping you. They're an enabler, you know? It's like these documentaries I've seen where, you know, somebody's really fat and they have a boyfriend or a girlfriend who keeps feeding them. They're enabling. I get a kick out looking after you. Okay, so that's the problem with victimhood. So what is victimhood? Victimhood is on an individual level, feeling like you are not enabled, but also it can be a societal thing where entire movements in society try and fix other groups of people in society, and inevitably fails because it's external. You know what I mean? I can't fix whatever. If I suddenly had a magic wand, I can't come into your house and I will give stuff to you and it will fix. I should, you know, interact with you and your family and your friends, and we'll try and work out what is necessary. We'll work at it. I can't just fix it. And this is the whole problem with the victim consciousness mindset. So victim consciousness is on an individual level, and victim consciousness is also on a group level. And the worrying thing about it, and why I'm putting this video out, is that we have to avoid going into it. It's like a black hole. It just sucks you in. And there's no help at the end of it. You see, we need hope in life. And when we feel like victims, we feel hopeless. We must have hope, not hopelessness. And we must be striving towards something, working towards something. So we should be enabling other groups of people and also enabling ourselves. So the first thing, okay, fixing society, maybe that's very difficult. But let's say just individually. So number one is, don't buy into this, I'm going to rescue somebody, okay? You try and empower somebody. Don't try and rescue them. The second thing is, for yourself, you are responsible. So you can just say this: I am responsible for my life and my decisions. I am responsible for my life and my decisions. Okay? I am not a victim. Okay? So you could be a victim of a car crash. You could be a victim of difficult life circumstance. You could be a victim of crime, for example, victim of a trauma. Yes, you are, but that's not who you are. It does not define who you are. It's an experience that you had, and it might traumatize you for a few days, weeks, or years even, but inevitably you must go beyond that, and it's a negative experience that happened to you in life, and now you've moved beyond it. So you must empower yourself. And also this is where there's a bit of a clash, because in this channel I talk about the law of attraction. If you don't know what the law of attraction is, it's the idea of repeated thoughts and feelings and visualizations create the life that you're in. And the problem that I think a lot of people who are into the law of attraction fall into is thinking I can just fix things by belief, and if my life is shitty, well, I must be failing at this, therefore guess what, I'm a victim, haven't I? The problem with the law of attraction is often a lot of people who are into the law of attraction are too critical of people who are genuine victims, because people do have situations in their life which are difficult. And it's too easy with the law of attraction. Well, you're failing because you're not good at the law of attraction. You're too identified as being a victim. It's all your fault. So we have two extremes here. We have on one side a bunch of people saying I'm a victim, I can't do anything. And then we have people like some of the law of attraction orthodox people, let's say, who are, well, everything that happens to you is your fault, therefore you're a fool. And that's too judgmental. Okay. So what's the answer? Well, the answer is yes, you could be a victim, but you shouldn't be into victimhood. The other thing is, yes, you should strive towards attracting good things into your life, being positive. You are responsible for, you're not responsible for your life, you're responsible for your response. And this is the mistake I feel a lot of these guys in the sort of law of attraction, New Age movement make. They think you're responsible, you're a failure, you're responsible. No, I'm responsible for my responses. I'm responsible for how I take things and do it things. But certain things do happen in my life which are somewhat external. So there's two extremes. One is I'm a total victim. The other is this judgmental kind of thing. And then the medium path is I'm not into victimhood. But the same token is I can't feel bad or like a failure because I wasn't successful at, say, romance or business or whatever it was. I'm a failure. No, that's also a dumb idea. I am responsible for my response. I must try the best. But there are certain external realities out there which I have to deal with. And I have certain limitations as a human being. And even if you talk about the law of attraction, well, it's got a thing called the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind is attracting its own thing into life. And I'm not fully responsible. Yes, I program the subconscious mind, but am I fully responsible for my programming? Because it's largely external, and even if internal, it's hard to see it. So what I'm saying is that the struggle for life is going beyond being a victim, going beyond victimhood, but the same token, not feeling like you're a failure. Yes, I'm responsible for progressing in life, but also there are external realities. So it goes in both directions. So the whole thing with the victim consciousness is it makes you feel you can't do anything. You must do something. You must try and do something. And you start by being, I'm responsible for my responses. I'm going to try my best. okay? And you need to work with that and work forward with that and take that more positive approach that we see with the, say, law of attraction, for example. Start thinking and feeling positive thoughts and ideas. Start good mind feed, good books, videos, and so on. Belief in yourself. Start developing faith in your vision. But also don't fall into the trap the law of attraction junkies fall into, which is then judging yourself as a failure because things didn't work out. Because life has many challenges, and just because I'm not a victim doesn't mean I can't fail. Failure is inevitable to some degree. Okay? So we don't want to fall into the perfectionism trap, and we don't want to fall into the victimhood trap. So that's really what it's about. So victimhood is both on a societal level and it's also on an individual level. And my advice to you is don't fall into the victimhood trap of thinking you're a victim or thinking other people are victims. And don't fall into the other trap of, oh, they're just not taking responsibility. That's, you know, over perfectionistic thinking, because people are genuine victims, but they shouldn't fall into victimhood. We must strive to do our best to take responsibility for our life. But at the same token, sometimes we have a lot of issues in our life and we are in a difficult situation. You can't turn around to somebody in a very poor minority situation and say, oh, you're responsible, get yourself out of there. It's not always possible. But at least we can get rid of the victim consciousness, okay? And that is the most important thing. And I've seen a lot with people who at times have very minimal finances. They're in a very difficult situation. It could easily be a victim, but they're not. They're choosing to try and have a job, try and help their family, try and do their best. They are being responsible while being in a it would normally be seen as a victim status, but they're not acting as the victim. So my advice to you is, if you're in, don't fall into victimhood consciousness, okay? And if you are in victimhood consciousness, you need to get yourself out as fast as you can. And we'll explore that in the next couple of videos, okay? But it's disempowering. It is a complex subject because to some degree people are victims and to some degree people are in challenging situations. But you should not fall into victimhood. It's not going to help you. And that you're not necessarily responsible for your life, not really, there's many external events, but you're responsible for your response. Okay? So please like and subscribe. I'll talk to you next time.